Hello there, everyone. Hope you're looking forward to Thanksgiving break. Since we're doing some interesting things with bar graphs and displaying categorical data in statistics class, I thought I might offer this little gem here about the COVID-19 virus. Now, we're probably already a little bit tired of hearing about the COVID-19, but it is a big deal, and it does offer some really interesting ways in which we use data in real life and how understanding how to interpret data and organize interpret data saves lives, right? Where people right now are using this data to try to save lives, and these are the skills they're going to use to do that. So in statistics, we know that data is organized and analyzed for us to be able to visualize, what the data suggests, what the data is telling us. One way to organize and display data is a graph. Many graphs display changes over time, like this one. We often also tell stories sequentially, right? Normally, a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Well, you can read a graph displaying data over time and interpret that as a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So in this graph here, we might say that in March, April, May, and June, so and here we go, March, April, May, and June, in this area of 2020, newly reported cases in the United States were relatively low. We can even put a number on that. We could say between 0 and 55, I'm sorry, between 0 and 50,000 new reported cases per day, right? That's about where this line is, quite less in March. And then there was a spike in total cases when? There was a spike in July, right? So in July, in this period, there was a peak somewhere between July and August. In mid-July, there was a peak in the 7-day average of new cases in July and August, which looked like it was possibly going down in September, October, right? This peak was declining, but then what happened? It's now peaking again, right? By end of October and November here, this graph is now peaking. We're in this huge spike of new cases, and the truth is we don't know if this is going to keep going up or maybe we've hit the peak, right? Hopefully we've hit the peak and it's only going to go down from here, but we don't know, right? So this is the story is never complete, but you can tell the story from beginning, middle, and end, right? So this is just one possible way to tell the story. There's more than one way. It's like you tell a story to 10 different people, you get 10 slightly different stories, right? Even if it's the same information, the same basic story. So this here is from the New York Times. This is national data in the United States. To tell the story of a graph, you want to look at the title. That's really important, and that gives you an idea of what this graph is about. What is being represented here? And we see that the graph here displays on the horizontal x-axis time, right? We got from March to November. And then we see here on the y-axis, the vertical axis, we've got percentages. So this title here is total U.S. deaths above normal. So, okay, so what's being shown here is deaths above normal between March and November. And then there's the percentage. Like, so right here in March, sometime there was 10% greater deaths than normal in March, right? And the peak here was above 40%. It was about 40% more deaths than normal sometime in probably beginning of April. And that seemed to go down, right? That seemed to go down, and there became a valley here, and sometime in June it looks like, right? At about only maybe 11 or 12% above normal in June sometime. But then in July it began to climb back up, and sometime in July, August, it peaked again at 25% above normal. And then it's going down, and then looks like, oh, this looks good, right? It's going down, it's going down. We see this, oh, November, nobody's dying anymore. But there's a little caveat here, right? So recent weeks may likely include undercounts. So basically the data is incomplete, maybe. Don't trust this part completely because we don't have all the data isn't in yet, right? This is developing as we speak. So one way to tell the story, you could say like in April, total U.S. deaths peaked at over 40% above the normal, falling in June, and then peaking again in August at about 25% above normal, and are currently somewhere between 5 and 10%, though that may be an undercount, right? That's one way you can tell the story. You probably have lots of different other ways of telling it. You could focus more on the valleys rather than the peaks. But you want to have a kind of a beginning, middle, end. You kind of want to talk about the peaks and the valleys, and kind of compare things, and you want to add some numbers in there, and you want to include something about the title somewhere in your story, so that way people know what you're talking about, right? This is a very important skill to have. I think, yeah, I will do this one. Yeah, I'll do this one. Like I say, we have it right here. We have a. This is actually not a. This is a graph from Monroe County COVID-19 dashboard. So this is information from our county, right, from our area locally. And I want you to notice how our local data is a little bit different from the national data, right? We have our peak in the June time, in June, and now we're going up. Whereas nationally, they had a peak in July. So our peak was sometime in June. The national peak was sometime mid-July. So our data locally is a little different than the national. But this curve here in November seems to be pretty much in keeping with what's going on nationally. So, all right. We could use a graph like this. We could say, all right, there was an initial peak of new positive cases in Monroe County in June 2020 of about, say, between 50 and 100 new positive cases, all right, per day. And then currently in November in 2020, Monroe County is recording between 200 and 250 new positive cases per day. So you notice how here I told about a beginning, this little peak here, and then I skipped to the end, this little peak here, and I didn't really talk much about this. I could have included that, right? I could have said we had about between 0 and 50 cases between, say, June and October. I could have said that and add that into the story to provide a middle. But you're trying to tell the most important story you think the data is telling. So I just chose to pick this peak here, talk about that, and this peak there. Could have even talked about this peak here. All sorts of different ways to tell the story. I'm just trying to give you an idea of kind of how to prioritize. All right, I'm going to have you do this one. All right, I'm going to have you do this one. But I'll give you some help, right? This is what this video is all about. So what do we have here? Look at the title. All right, there's the title, Hospitalizations in ICU COVID-19 Patients in the Finger Lakes Region. Okay, so this includes Monroe County, Finger Lakes Region, Rochester, and Monroe County included. All right, what do we have on our horizontal axis? Oh, we got time. We've got time. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. If I was looking at the important part, I would say this is my beginning, this is my middle, and this is the end of my story, right? I'm going to look at what the y-axis is here. It's number of people. Okay, so the blue represents total COVID-19 patients hospitalized, and yellow is patients in the ICU, right? Intensive care unit. So how do I want to read this? I would tell a story that would something like this. In April and May, we had about 25 to 50 people in the ICU in the April and May. I'm trying to even all these little bars out in my head, visually. And we had about 100 people, maybe a little bit over 100, 125 people in hospitalized due to COVID. All right, COVID-19 patients. And then in, let's see, May, June. June is right in between July, so this is June. In June, we had a spike of people hospitalized with about over 200 people hospitalized in June, and about almost 50, I'll say 40 people in the ICU each day in the Finger Lakes region. And then between July and say October, it really reduced a lot, right? We had like 25 or less people hospitalized and maybe 10 or so in the ICU in this time. But now we're peaking again here in November 2020. We have over 200 people hospitalized currently, and almost 50 people in the ICU due to COVID-19. You don't have to include everything I just said right now, but you want to tell, this peak of the story, maybe this middle valley of the story, and then this peak at the end of the story, right? So you probably want about 3 sentences. You probably want to talk about hospitalizations and ICU COVID patients in the Finger Lakes region. You might want to make some talk about the difference between the hospitalized and hospitalized in the intensive care unit. And you might want to talk about some numbers in terms of people. Use approximately, about, these kinds of words to avoid trying to give exact numbers, like about this many people or approximately this, or around. So you don't have to use exact numbers. Just give general picture of what this is right there. All right. Go ahead and do that. I'm gonna stop this video right now and include another video for the other stuff. Oh, I turned off my drawing tools, but I didn't turn off the recording.